In this video, we're going to go over some more examples of how to use our basic identities and definitions to find different trigonometric function values. So here in this example, it says find the values of the 6 trigonometric functions of the angle t based on this figure. So we have the x and y values for the point where terminal site crosses the circumference. And I hope you do recognize those values. Positive 1/2 and positive square root of 3/2 is the x and y coordinates of the angle of pi/3 or 60-degree angle. So this angle is in a third quadrant, so both x and y are negative. That's some background information, but what you need to know here is that cosine of t is the x value, so basically it's going to be negative 1/2. The sine of t is the y value, and it's going to be negative root of 3/2. Tangent t is actually it's either sine over cosine or y over x, and that's going to be the y is negative root of 3/2, and you're going to divide it by the x, which is negative 1/2. So it turns into a product, just like we discussed before, square root of 3/2 times, and I'm dropping the negatives now because negative times negative is positive. I know that. So 2/1, and that's just the root of 3. For the cotangent, that's 1/tangent. So it's going to be 1/square root of 3, and rationalizing the denominator, we will get a square root of 3/3. And the last two functions out of 6 will be a secant, which is 1/cosine. So basically 1/, means we just flip it, but how does that happen? So we have 1 divided by negative 1/2. And again, when we divide, we just flip the fraction. So negative 2/1. So the result is negative 2. So when you have 1/ something, in the end, it's 1 times the reciprocal, which multiplying 1 by anything doesn't change it at all. So that's why we end up with a reciprocal of the second thing that we're dividing by. In this case, it's cosine t. So whenever you have this situation, 1 divided by something, the shortcut is to flip what's in the denominator. So we had negative 1/2. We flipped it, it turned into negative 2. So that's a shortcut that you can use. And finally, cosecant of t is 1/sine t, and that's again, the sine t is negative root of 3/2. When we flip it, it's going to be negative 2 divided by root of 3. But we need to rationalize the denominator. That's the final step. And we're getting negative 2 roots of 3/3. So this is how you could do this problem using our basic knowledge or basic identities. You could just use the reference angle and the information that we know that for reference angles and our values in quadrant 3, and a tangent and cotangent being positive and everything else being negative, we could just use that. That would be a shortcut. So right now you have many options. You have many tools that you can use. And I want you to try this problem by yourself. So we're looking at the 3 pi over 2 angle with coordinates 0 and -1. Pause here and try it. And let's move forward. If you have any questions, let me know in class or in the chat. And we're going to look at the next example, number 9 for this section. Okay, says if sine t is -√3/2 and cosine t is 1/2, find secant, cosecant, tangent, and cotangent. And even though we recognize those values, we can figure out which angle it is now, but we're going to pretend that we don't, and we're just going to use our basic identities to solve it. So for the secant function, secant is 1 over cosine. So we're going to have 1 divided by the cosine value, 1 divided by 1/2, and 1 times 2 over 1 equals 2. For the next one that they want to that I asked this for is cosecant. So cosecant is a 1 over cosine sine t. Sine t. So we have 1 divided by, let me read this value close, so it's -√3 over 2. So 1 multiplied by -2 over √3. So again, that's just -2 over √3, and we need to rationalize. So that's -2 roots of 3 over 3. Tangent is sine over cosine. So the sine is -√3 over 2. And we're going to divide it by 1/2. So times 2 over 1, which after we simplify 2's, we'll get, we will be left with -√3. And the cotangent is actually cosine t divided by sine t. So we have 1/2 divided by -√3 over 2, multiplying by the reciprocal of the second fraction. We have 1 over -√3. I'm going to actually transfer the negative to the numerator and rationalize the denominator. And my answer is -√3 over 3 for the cotangent of t. And I want you to try this one by yourself when sine of t is square root of 2 over 2 and the cosine is square root of 2 over 2. Find secant, cosecant, tangent, and cotangent. This is a useful exercise that will help you memorize those basic definitions of basic trig functions. You're going to be using them a lot. And I assume that you're already done with that. If not, just pause the video and continue. And here's our last example for this section. And this is about using your calculator to find trigonometric functions. It says using technology, and we need to evaluate the cosecant of 5 pi over 7. If you look at the denominator, this is not a common denominator that we are used to. This is not one of our common angles, so we need technology help to figure that out. And here's my calculator. And I want you to notice that all of the calculators, they have sine and inverse sine, cosine, and inverse cosine, which we haven't talked about yet. And same for tangent and inverse tangent. Now, this -1, it's not 1 divided by sine. That means something else. This means inverse of that function. So it's not for example, cosine to the -1 here on the calculator, it doesn't mean reciprocal of cosine. It means an inverse of cosine. Unfortunately, the notations are the same. It looks the same. It's like a power of -1, but it means two completely different things. So I want to point it out right now. It's an unfortunate notation, but we have to live with it. Anyway, so your calculator, out of the 6 trigonometric functions that we just learned, your calculator will only do 3: sine, cosine, and tangent. So what do you do when you are asked to calculate a cosecant? Okay, what you need to remember is that cosecant, what is it? 5 pi over 7. 5 pi over 7. That your cosecant function is actually 1 over sine, right? So it's 1 over sine of 5 pi over 7. So what you need to do, you need to find your sine first. Okay. So first, let's make sure that our calculator is in radian mode. So go check your mode. And yes, we are in radians. And now I can find a sine of pi. Well, I need 5 pi. So 5 pi divided by 7 close parenthesis. Okay, so this is my sine, and then I can do 1 divided by this value, or you could just bring up your previous answer, use your previous answer. So it's a second function key right here on the bottom. So I'm gonna put second answer, and it's just gonna insert my previous answer here. And here you are. It's 1.279 approximately. So this is approximately equals to 1.279. So this is how you go about finding cosecant, secant, and also cotangent. So you have to find its cofunction first and then go from there. Now I want you to try this one by yourself. Evaluate the cotangent of negative pi over 8.